Hi, this is Father Joe Cisetti. Thank you for joining me today. On November 13th, the Church holds up for us a wonderful saint. Her name is Frances Xavier Cabrini, also known as Mother Cabrini. She was born in northern Italy in 1850. She had a very strong faith. She wanted to be a religious, she wanted to be a missionary to China. Like our own Saint Therese, she was received in an audience by Pope Leo XIII. And he said to her, "Your mission is not to the east, it is to the west." And so she and her sisters, the missionary sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, set off for America. Now, not just the United States, but North America, Central America, and South America. There they served, there they gave themselves. And so much of their work was dedicated to serving Italian immigrants who were far from their homeland, who were facing a different culture, different languages, being possible to exploitation, being vulnerable to exploitation, as well as the danger of being drawn away from their faith. And so she worked on behalf of them. It's said that even she would send her sisters down into the mines to minister to the miners there. Now, she was a small woman with frail health, but beneath that frail health, there was someone who had some very steely determination and great courage. When she and her sisters arrived in New York City, at the invitation of the Archbishop there, he had sent a cable or had sent word back for them not to come, but they didn't get it. So they had made this long journey to the United States. They met with the Archbishop, and he basically said, "Why don't you go back to Italy?" And Frances Xavier Cabrini said, "No, Your Grace, that is impossible. I have come here with the permission of the Holy See, and here I will remain." And then she pulled out the documentation from a Roman congregation to back up her cause. And the Archbishop had enough savvy to realize he had been beat, or that this wouldn't be a battle to fight, and so he allowed her to stay, and she and her sisters set to work. She founded 67 different institutions in the Western Hemisphere as well as in Europe, orphanages, schools, hospitals, and she and her sisters poured themselves out in this loving service. She did this for 35 years. Now, she had a dislike, if not a fear, of traveling by sea, and yet she crossed the Atlantic over 30 times. Interesting side note, there's a story that in 1912 she was in England and she was getting ready to go to America. And her sisters had booked, or someone had booked, passage for her on this brand new ship that was supposed to be unsinkable. Well, of course, it was the Titanic. Now, she had to travel to Italy, and so she never boarded the Titanic. But you can imagine how that might have even increased her fear. Yet she was not going to let fear hold her back. And so we see in her this great determination, this great courage. And where did she get all this? Well, it was from her deep faith, her faith in Jesus, her faith in the Sacred Heart. She once wrote to her sisters, difficulties, what are they, my sisters? They are merely children's playthings, exaggerated by the imagination of the person who is not yet accustomed to trusting entirely in the infinite power of God. Dangers, what are dangers? Merely phantoms to frighten those souls who, having dedicated themselves to God, or rather imagine that they have done so, possess nonetheless too much of the spirit of the world which manifests itself like an ember under ashes, rising to scatter with every contrary wind. I am fragile. If only we were more humble and constant, God would be our strength, and fortified by the strength of God. Of what are we afraid? Though the devil may be terrible, he is only a chained dog. Make up for the defeats you have suffered, and then continue with stronger courage than you had at first. Her motto, taken from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians, was Omnia possum in eo qui me convertat. I can do all things in him who strengthens me. I can do all things in him who strengthens me. This woman of deep faith and deep determination and deep courage. Another interesting side note, particularly for us, is that she became a U.S. citizen, and she is the first U.S. citizen to be canonized as a saint. So there's something special about her for us as well. She spent her life serving those on the peripheries, serving those on the edges of society. She died in 1917 at Columbus Hospital in Chicago. Now, the hospital is gone, but the chapel to the hospital is still there. There's a shrine there to her, as well as the room where she died. She is buried at a high school that's on the northern end of the island of Manhattan. Both places to see, I think, if you get there. I've not been to her grave. I have been to the chapel in Chicago. It's in the Lincoln Park area. It would be something worth seeing. Again, we learn from her so much about faith, about determination, about courage, about reaching out and serving those on the edges. May she always inspire us with her example and assist us with her prayers. And in a special way, we ask her to pray for our country, and that we too might be open to the vulnerable, to those who are needy, to the immigrant, in the end, to all those who are in need. St. Francis Xavier Cabrini, pray for us.